Bonjour, chers amis.
Well, good afternoon, dear friends. A few words on my background. First of all, I studied law and management and economy and then spent 15 years as a rural economist in many bodies. I spent 10 years in Africa. I managed a cooperative. I helped in planning, training, and research, after which I was a teacher at the National Supérieure School of Agronomics in Toulouse until I retired in the year 2000. And then I continued to work on trade policies for peasant organizations in the north and in the south, and I worked with the NGOs around this topic. This made it possible for me to help them and be with them in a number of meetings of the World Trade Organization since 1999, also in the annual forums of the World Food Organization, and I've also been part of the network of Western African countries around agriculture. And since 2013, I'm also part of a consultative group of members on the global food policy of the European Union. Now, to be more concrete, I'm going to try and analyze the disruptive scheme of the European food scheme, which is really endangering the food safety of sub-Saharan Africa. So, sub-Saharan Africa, for you to picture it more closely. Sub-Saharan Africa is the region in the world, the only region in the world, when the number of starving people has increased since 1990. And in Western Africa is the region in the world which is going to face a major demographic boom. We're going to go from 350 million inhabitants to almost 800 million inhabitants by 2050, which means more than 300 inhabitants, 300 million inhabitants more than the European Union. So, registering this, I'm going to concentrate on the common agricultural policy and concentrating on Western Africa. My diagnosis is very simple. Free trade never worked in agriculture. It never applied properly to agriculture for a very simple reason. When the short-term food demand is stable, but production is really dependent on climate, and therefore the levels of revenues and the level of prices of foods and commodities changes all the time, and this is why since the Egyptian times there have been policies to try and regulate those prices at the border and also to foster measures to store food. The international organization, which was built in 1947, right in the wake of the Second World War, decided on agricultural exception. Until the WTO was created, there were a number of measures to try and protect the agricultural market, and there was no limitations to subsidies, and subsidies was creating dumping, as was really in favor of exportation, but if this was detrimental to poorer country. But since the middle of the 90s, with the influence and under the pressure of the agribusiness firms of the European Union and the European Union and the United States, those companies had gone to the top of the ladder of profit thanks to the subsidies, and they still wanted to increase their profits, and they wanted to purchase the raw material at very low price. The European Union has created a real trap against the developing countries. They thought, well, now that thanks to protectionism, the high level of protection, we're now the most competitive of the market, let's make it sure that the developing country can become competitors. So together, they launched a new negotiation, multinational negotiation of the free trade agreement, which lasted until 1993, and which objective was to reduce and to oblige all countries to reduce their level of protection on imported agricultural products, which was already very low. And so the United States and the European Union, together, they did two things. First of all, they changed their internal agricultural policy through a reduction of the minimum guaranteed price so that the agro-food industry could get those products for a very low price and increase their profits. But at the same time, they negotiated the agreement on agriculture within what would become the WTO, and they made sure that direct helps and subsidies that they would give to the peasants to compensate for the loss of profit will not have an impact on the prices. So it means that therefore the prices are extremely volatile. We see that the prices at the time being, they tend to decrease very, very much, because there is a decrease in growth in the emerging country, and also the borders are being closed in Russia, and therefore the price of agricultural products are back to the level they were between the years 1987 and the year 2000. So in the face of all those phenomena, this new policy was counterproductive for the European Union. Since 1992, the changes in the common agricultural policy. So between 1962 and 1992, there was a high level of protection on imported products, and we see that during this period of time, the total production level of the European Union of the 15 members and not 28 members increased by 1.5% each year, while since 1992 there is a turning point. And between 1992 and 2002, the value of production at constant price has been stagnant, and worse than that, the revenue has decreased by 2.3% per year for all the peasants in the European Union. So in the last 20 years, the farmers have lost 2.3% of revenue every year, which means that the number of people working in that industry also decreased by more than 2% in that period of time. So it's really a counter-performance by the European Union. On top of that, Stéphane Le Foll and the European Commission are boasting that Europe is the first world exporter of food products. Obviously, they're hiding the fact that the European Union has also the highest deficit, structural deficit in the trade of food products. So it seems that those exchanges are the white curve. You can tell that the deficit has been decreased in the last years thanks to the high price of cereals that we export, and this contributed to reducing the deficit. But, however, the global deficit in the trade is hiding two facts. First of all, there is an accident in the trades with the developing countries, but a high deficit with the developing countries where we said that the mission is to feed the people there. So the European Union receives structural help from the developing countries. But there's even worse than that. For the developing country, and notably for those countries in sub-Saharan Africa, and notably for Western Africa, the agreement of fair trade that the European Union want them to sign, want to impose to them. Those agreements have been signed by the ministers of Foreign Affairs and have signed in January, and in February 2016, our Parliament want to ratify those agreements. But in the meantime, all the states in Western Africa haven't signed this partnership, and we hope that Nigeria will sign this partnership. If Nigeria doesn't sign, there are high chances that the other countries don't sign, because it would be a catastrophe. Because in the fair trade agreement between Western Africa and the European Union, those countries, those African countries, will have to remove all the rights, all the custom rights on all the products that will come from the European Union. And thanks to the economists' calculation, it means 56 billion euros between 2016 and 2035, 56 billion of customs rights which will be lost. This will reduce the budgets that they can allocate to health, to education, to the environment. This region already has very weak industries. They're going to collapse and crumble, and unemployment is going to increase, and therefore there will be more migrants. Frontex told us that we have loads of people from Western Africa, and this number is going to explode, and Boko Haram will find it easier to recruit desperate people, and the trafficking of arms and drug will be booming in this region, and this will happen all because of this free trade agreement. So the European Union is completely counterproductive on this, especially because the population in this region, because we know that there will be a demographic boom by 2015. In 2030, there will be the same number of inhabitants in Western Africa as there is in the entire European Union. And this is a catastrophe. I have to stop here. But I just wanted to show you an alternative here. The Alter scenario 2050 was developed by the association called Solagro. It will make France autonomous from a food perspective, but also paper production and wood production, if we generalize what we already have with a different diet, more vegetable, less meat, more cereals, and therefore there would be what we call a food sovereignty. We would no longer import palm tree oil and soya and soy, and we would import towards structurally countries with a deficit in food, like in the Mediterranean or in the Arab countries. Well, thank you.